Good evening, everyone. Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Nathan Shot here for this edition of Nate at H. The heat wave is upon us, and that heat and humidity staying with us for most of this week. There is not much relief, unfortunately, here near term, and that is a bit of what we're going to be talking about on this edition of Nate at H. Just the hot and humid conditions continuing. We'll be trending a little cooler to the weekend, yes, and I think after tomorrow, the temperatures will drop some, but there is just not much relief. When I'm talking about temperatures dropping, for the most part going through the weekend, it's within a handful of degrees. It's really not a big cool down. And as we do trend a little bit cooler, this humidity, I do not foresee dropping much at all. So it's just unbearably humid through this weekend. And during this stretch, it does turn, we fall back in the 80s, but really, that's still very warm, almost hot, right? It's still not quite as hot as what it's going to be tomorrow, I think, by the time we get into the weekend, but you get the idea. There is just not much relief. There's some, just not much. So, I think overall, to sum up the entirety of this week, it is still just hot and humid. Now, the more excessive heat that was in place today, that will be more likely concentrated around tomorrow, maybe again into Wednesday. But I do think tomorrow, similar to today, the heat then not quite as excessive by the time we get into the weekend, but still just a hot and humid stretch. During this time, what's going to trend us cooler is rain chances picking up. So more cloud cover, more rain is going to start to trend us cooler into the afternoon. Still very humid. Again, likely no drop in that humidity. But due to the fact we'll deal with more cloud cover and some more rain in the region, can trend us a bit cooler into the weekend. And that being said, unfortunately, what returns of that rain on what I think will be essentially a daily basis is unfortunately that potential for severe weather and localized flooding, unfortunately. And we're going to be vigilant, keep a very close eye on how things go throughout the week, but almost on a daily basis, unfortunately, that potential is there. So that's a bit we're going to be talking about for this edition of Nate at 8. First of all, let's touch on, again, what was present today and what we're going to see again repeated tomorrow. Just hot and humid. Our temperatures today topping off in the mid-lower 90s. We saw the current temperatures now falling back in the 80s, but, still a hot and humid day. That humidity, these dew points were hovering around 70, and that's exactly where they are right now. So really to that range of just unbearably humid, anywhere around 70 plus is just unbearably humid. And that will carry over, I think, as we extend through this weekend. I really don't foresee much relief from that humidity. So factor in the heat and humidity. Earlier today, we saw into our area, some locations even exceeded 100 degrees for that heat index in terms of how hot it feels. Other locations were well in the 90s. Now, as temperatures are starting to fall in the 80s, it still feels like it's in the 90s across the area. That heat index will very much be in play again for tomorrow. Similar, I think, to today. So near, if not into the 100s, is how hot it's going to feel. Close to 100 Wednesday. Same story then, well in the 90s Thursday, Friday, and back closer to the mid-90s Saturday. Just on hot and humid stretch, right? Even when temperatures start to trend a bit cooler, because it's very humid going through the weekend, it's still likely feeling like it's in the 90s despite our highs back in the 80s. So that's why I say, there's some relief, right? Those numbers are a bit lower by the weekend. It's just, that's the key word, some, not a lot. And it's just going to be a hot and humid stretch through the weekend. There's no relief here near term. Now, the question is, of course, when is there? And thankfully, it's in sight. Thankfully, it is in sight, but we likely have to hold off to around the middle of next week. So I would say up until the middle of next week, just be prepared for hot and humid conditions. Yes, as you can see, a little bit of a cool down into the weekend with respect to what we saw for today and what we're going to likely see tomorrow. It's just that it's not a big drop, right? It's a little bit. It's a touch cooler. It's not quite as bad, but still, I would sum up what we have in place through this weekend: hot, humid. By the middle of next week, it's still warm, but we'll notice a further drop in temperatures, and especially the bigger notice will be the drop in humidity. Back to more tolerable levels. It won't be as bad around the middle of next week. It's still a bit early to make a call into the 4th of July, but it does look like we settle into a more pleasant pattern around next Wednesday, Thursday, so hopefully that can carry over into the 4th of July. Still a lot of uncertainty with that being said, but if as it stands now, hopefully that nicer pattern that develops around the middle of next week can at least carry over into the 4th of July on Friday. But it is a little bit earlier to make that call in case you were curious about what we're going to see. So it's certainly good to see that nice pattern develops around Wednesday, Thursday. So there's good odds I think that it can carry over into Friday, and hopefully it will. So the nice weather I think is arriving right out ahead of 4th of July, and hopefully it carries over into the 4th of July as well. Let's catch up on some comments here before we continue on. Austin joining us on YouTube saying, good evening. This weekend, brutal. Hope that you stayed safe and cool. And yes, enjoyed the air conditioning. That's for sure. And again, today, I feel like the air conditioner was running a lot. And I'm sure a lot of you are same story. It's trying to keep up, and it is, but it's just running a lot. And yeah, enjoyed it. Thank goodness for the AC. That's for sure. Good evening, Drew. How are you doing? I'm doing well. Did we set a record for the date? Any of our recording stations? No, not into New Philadelphia or Wheeling into our area. Not reaching record values today. It was close, and we're likely within that handful of degrees again tomorrow. It was close, but not setting it. Not setting that record high today. Joe, good evening to you. I see the angry emote abound, more of them for the next 3 days. And yeah, Drew, a lot of those, again, I think that's the one thing that does not change much. It's just as humid as it is right now. And when we start to get some rain in the mix, possibly even a little higher, and we can get these dew points mid-lower 70s, just unbearable, disgusting. I mean, that's the way to put it. I don't foresee any drop in that humidity through this weekend. So, even despite these temperatures falling back in the 80s, you factor in very humid conditions, and it's still likely going to feel like it's in the 90s. So we still have to wait likely till the middle of next week. That's when we can finally have more of a sigh of relief from the humidity and a little bit further cool down in those temperatures as well. Asa says, can't wait for cooler weather. Yeah, we'll be looking forward to the middle of next week. That's for sure. So that being said, a lot of this is kind of, we know this stuff, right? It's kind of common sense. A lot of us know this, but just to go over some of the heat safety tips again, as we continue to see these hot and humid conditions, obviously you want to be taking breaks in the shade. Air conditioning is even better. Make sure you're staying hydrated, right? Just in general, don't push yourself, right? Check up on the elderly, sick, those with that air conditioning, your friends, family, neighbors. Check up on them during this hot stretch, especially those who may not have air conditioning. Obviously want to be making sure they're okay in this heat, and offering them a place to come in and cool down, right? If you have that ability. If not, seek out those cooling shelters. Good resource is actually to call 211. You can call 211, navigate through that resource, and they will give information on your nearest cooling center. I know if you look on our website as well, WTOB9.com, I think we've got a lot of information on the cooling centers up as well. It's just some more heat safety tips for your air conditioner. A lot of stories up there on WTOB9.com for more heat safety. Limit outdoor activities, certainly those strenuous activities. I know that's not a possibility for all of us. We still have things to do outside, but obviously just don't push yourself, right? Stay hydrated, take breaks. Don't push yourself in this heat. And, even when we take these precautions, I know that this heat can still get the best of us. And really, this is the most important thing to keep in mind as this heat continues this week is the heat dangers. Recognize these symptoms and then know the course of action, right? So the two main dangers of dealing with this heat in terms of, dangers for us, heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Those are the two medical dangers when it comes to dealing with the heat that can be life-threatening. So heat exhaustion, if we're outdoors and the heat's just starting to get to us, you may start to notice becoming more faint or dizzy, excessively sweating. You may notice a cool, pale, clammy skin, may notice some nausea, maybe vomiting, a rapid, weak pulse, and muscle cramps. Those are all symptoms of heat exhaustion. If you start to notice some of those symptoms in this heat, you want to immediately find a way to cool down. You want to get out of the heat, find an air-conditioned place, take a cool shower, use a cold compress, drink some water, whatever you can to cool yourself down. Now, that being said, what is more of a medical emergency is a heat stroke. And so some of the big differences there, if you're noticing that you have a throbbing headache and you're not sweating. So say you're not excessively sweating and you have a red, hot, dry skin, right? No sweat, throbbing headache, rapid, strong pulse. Those are symptoms of a heat stroke. And if you have those symptoms, you want to be calling 911 immediately. That's a medical emergency. If you have heat exhaustion, right, just do your best to cool down, find ways to cool down, drink water, get out of the heat, and that you can recover from heat exhaustion, right? To taking those steps. But if you get to the point where you're having the symptoms of heat stroke, you want to be calling 911 immediately. That's a medical emergency. You need care from medical professionals. So know the dangers of heat here. Don't push yourself, right? If you're noticing the symptoms of heat exhaustion, don't push yourself to the point of a possible heat stroke. It is not worth it. Take extra precaution during this heat stretch. Again, check up on your loved ones, friends, family members. Make sure, they're not displaying any of these symptoms, and stay safe. Heat is no joke, and it can be dangerous and life-threatening. And just in general, don't push yourself during this hot stretch. As well, for our furry friends, obviously, you don't want to forget about them. Don't keep them outside in this heat, right? Bring them in. Make sure they got plenty of water. Limit exercise. Avoid walks on hot pavement. That pavement is easily hot enough to burn their paws. Do not have them on that hot pavement during this heat wave. Assure they have plenty of water. And as always, we know this, just as always, never leave them alone. Vehicle, even with cracked windows, it still gets dangerously hot in the vehicle. Even with the windows cracked and even down, it still gets very hot in the vehicle and can be dangerous. Of course, keep in mind, obviously, our furry friends, they even have a coat on, right? With the fur, it feels even hotter to them, I'm sure, than it does to us. So certainly don't want to forget about our furry friends and keep them in mind during this heat, and bring them in, make sure they got plenty of water. Again, to limit that exercise, certainly those walks on hot pavement. Just another side note as well, keep in mind that, if you have your kids out playing on, maybe you're headed to a playground, that playground equipment can be dangerously hot as well in this hot weather. So just something else of a side note. Keep in mind those dark surfaces, including playground equipment, it can get dangerously hot in this heat. So it's just something else to keep in mind. So let's get back to the forecast. So we're dealing with the heat, the humidity, and like I mentioned, eventually dealing with the precipitation as well, as rain chances are going to start to pick back up. Now here near term, we're still good. We're not tracking anything on radar for this evening. We're not going to track anything likely as we go through the night or into tomorrow morning. But as early as tomorrow afternoon is when that potential is there for a shower and thunderstorm. What we do see is going to likely be more stray. It's a pop-up into the afternoon and evening, but just like what Futurecast is showing, we can spot it. So we can have that more isolated shower thunderstorm popping up into the afternoon and evening. It'll carry over to early tomorrow night, then taper off. We're going to dry up into Wednesday morning. Dry for the first half of Wednesday, then notice what happens in the afternoon and evening hours. More showers and thunderstorms popping up. And I think this is going to be a similar repeat for a lot of this week, as we're going to deal with these showers and thunderstorms developing in the afternoon and evening, tapering off overnight, and developing in the afternoon and evening. It's going to be a repeat cycle likely for a lot of this week. Again, starting tomorrow, although tomorrow it's much more isolated. I think a lot of us stay dry, but after that is when the coverage will pick up. So more of us can deal with these showers and thunderstorms on Wednesday afternoon and evening. And then again, just repeating that Thursday afternoon, evening, Friday afternoon, evening, and again in the weekend as well. So it's just a continuous repeat. The emphasis will be in the afternoon, evening hours when we see the bulk of these showers and thunderstorms. A lot of them taper off overnight, and then they'll pick back up as we do extend into the following afternoon and evening. So that's that similar repeat pattern that will likely be in for a lot of this week, that'll carry over through this weekend. And unfortunately, in this pattern, as it continues, that potential is there for severe weather, and the potential is there for localized flooding. Unfortunately, the potential is there for both, I think, on a daily basis. And this unfortunately even starts tomorrow if we do see them develop, because again, it's not a great chance. It's more isolated, but we can see some stray showers and thunderstorms. Any thunderstorms that develop in our area tomorrow can become severe. Now, the primary concern for tomorrow and into Wednesday will be damaging winds. A lower tornado risk, maybe some hail into the storms, but it's primarily damaging winds is the primary concern for both Tuesday as well as Wednesday. We can get some pretty strong downbursts within these that can cause some damage on a local scale where we do see these thunderstorms develop. So that is going to be the primary concern Tuesday, Wednesday. Notice the coverage of the severe weather outlook. It's greater Wednesday because we will have higher coverage. The emphasis for tomorrow, more north of I-70, a little higher chance to see that stray shower thunderstorm likely north of I-70 Tuesday, and then that potential is there across the area on Wednesday. So that's the reasoning why we're seeing the differing of the area shaded in green with respect from Tuesday and into Wednesday. And again, damaging winds, the primary concern for both your Tuesday as well as your Wednesday. Tornado risk looks low for both days. Maybe some hail within these storms, but it is going to be primarily damaging winds that is the concern. Now, with that, these showers and thunderstorms staying more isolated tomorrow, thankfully that does keep that risk for localized flooding low. But by the time we get into Wednesday, as coverage will pick up and we can start to see some rounds of heavy rain over the same location, and a training effect of these thunderstorms just tracking continuously over the same area, unfortunately, that's where the risk for localized flooding will return. And again, I think that can stay with us on almost a daily basis, in addition to dealing with the potential for some strong to severe thunderstorms. So it's unfortunate. We got to keep vigilant. Again, the emphasis is going to be in the afternoon and evening, so we're going to keep a close eye on conditions throughout the afternoon and evening through this week. Of course, I'll be right back, right back here with these editions and eight as well for updates. But I'll be here monitoring these showers and thunderstorms in the afternoon and evening throughout the week. So I'll be right here with you, and we're going to keep a close eye on everything. And it's just one of those patterns that we have in place through the weekend where, when we're dealing with these thunderstorms on a daily basis, and again, a lot of them in the afternoon and evening, it's hot and humid, a lot of fuel for these thunderstorms, and we just have to keep vigilant, right? Keep weather aware and keep vigilant. Have multiple ways to get warnings. Mobile phone is going to be a great way. Download the Severe Weather Team 9 mobile app. It will alert you not only to any watches and warnings issued for your location, but also would give you a heads up with rain coming your way, lightning detected near you. It's a handy tool to have, the Severe Weather Team 9 mobile app. Just jump right on to, if you have, depending, whatever your app store may be, depending on your phone, jump right into your app store, look up Severe Weather Team 9 and it'll pop up. Download it. It's a good tool to have. And that's just one way to get that warning throughout this week. Mobile phone's a great way. NOAA weather radio is a great way. TV can be a good way. Radio in general can be a good way. The other ways to get that warning, even generally just internet, social media, right? Just have multiple ways to get that warning throughout the week, and just keep weather aware, especially into these afternoon and evenings. As you can see in the 9+1 day forecast, that as we look ahead, as you can see, yes, that scattered shower and thunderstorm, that potential is there on a daily basis, even tomorrow, even though it's a slight chance, even tomorrow. I know pickup and coverage likely Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, maybe have some in the morning as well. And then the emphasis Sunday into Monday is going to be back in the afternoon and the evening. And then by the middle of next week, that's when we'll spot more sunshine, dry conditions returning, lower humidity returning, and a little bit of a cooler temperature returning as well. Drew says, are there going to be any fronts rolling in late week? So we'll see that front deliver that cool down. That would be more early next week, Drew, that we'll see that. And that will then drop that humidity and drop temperatures a little bit more. That will deliver then the further cool down, the further drop in humidity. That would be early next week, though, Drew, is that front passage. Again, what's going to start to trend us a little cooler here near term is just the fact that we will deal likely with more cloud cover in place after tomorrow. And then we'll also deal with, if we're dealing with more rain going through the afternoon, that can limit how much we warm as well, dealing with some rain-cooled temperatures. So likely just a combination of both of those are going to start to trend us a bit cooler as the week does progress, continuing then into the weekend. And once we see that cold front pass, a further then drop in humidity, drop in rain chances, drop in cloud cover, drop in temperatures will occur around the middle of next week. Austin saying, curious why we had a windy breeze during a heat advisory. So keep in mind the heat advisory is just based off the heat index. So if you're dealing with a heat index reaching and possibly exceeding 100, within that range, 100 to 105 for heat index, that prompts a heat advisory. And we were within that range today. That potential is certainly there. And we saw some locations even reach up to close to 105 for a heat index. So you stay within that range, that will prompt that heat advisory. And it's the criteria is for that, not if it's dealing with a breeze, but just dealing with that, the heat index. That's what we're really looking at. So factoring into both the heat as well as the humidity. If it reaches 100 plus, it prompts that heat advisory from 100 to 105. So that's why we had that in effect. Staying in effect again for tomorrow. We can see the heat index temperatures, humidity, very similar with respect to today again for Tuesday. Wednesday, I think it could be a little lower, but still we can reach 100 for that heat index. So we're maintaining that heat advisory through Wednesday, and then the heat advisory no longer in effect by Thursday into Friday as temperatures start to trend a little bit cooler. Keep in mind, still will feel well in the 90s. It is still hot and humid through the weekend, but it not quite as excessive by the time we get late week in the weekend with respect to what we have for today, tomorrow, and quite possibly into Wednesday as well. So that's why dealing with that heat advisory in effect going through Wednesday and not carrying over into Thursday, Friday, or the weekend is that potential for that heat index. It can stay below 100 Thursday, Friday, and the weekend. So that being said, that's why the heat advisory does not continue into that stretch. But keep in mind, again, still likely well in the 90s and likely not far from 100 degrees for a heat index in these afternoons, Thursday going then through the weekend. Even as we fall back in the 80s this weekend, it still likely feels like it's in the 90s. Not quite closer to 100 at that point, but still will likely feel like it's in the 90s. So yeah, just not a comfortable stretch of weather, that's for sure. Over the weekend, College World Series, 98 degrees, 25, 35 mile per hour wind gusts. That was their only saving grace. Sunny and hot there, Drew says. And yeah, thank goodness a little bit of a breeze with this, that's for sure. But yeah, still just unbearably hot and humid. And unfortunately, as you can see, that carries over for a lot of this stretch. And our attention, obviously, still there with dealing with this heat and humidity. Obviously, still don't want to take it lightly, even as the heat advisory expires and going into the weekend. We still don't want to take it lightly. Still practice heat safety, check up on your friends, loved ones, neighbors, but certainly also want to keep weather aware because our attention is going to start to turn to the afternoon, evening hours with these scattered showers and thunderstorms, with unfortunately the potential for both localized flooding and the potential for some strong to severe thunderstorms. So we got to keep vigilant, keep an eye on the sky, download the Severe Weather Team 9 mobile app, keep an eye on that radar, watch for any warnings issued. And I'm going to stay right here, keeping a close eye on this weather in these afternoon evenings throughout the week. So make sure to stay tuned for the latest. And of course, continue to bring the latest with these editions of Nate at 8 as we go throughout the week as well. So hopefully everyone is able to stay cool. Again, don't push yourself in this heat. It was a pleasure as always for this edition of Nate at 8. I hope everyone has a wonderful and hopefully cool night ahead. And as we look ahead into tomorrow, again, a lot of what we saw today carries over tomorrow, but that potential is there for that isolated shower and thunderstorm in the afternoon and evening. I'll have the latest coming up on News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, News 9 tonight at 11, and of course the latest on this more active weather pattern as we look ahead later on into the week. I'll have the latest on that coming up with your next edition of Nate at 8 tomorrow evening. So until then, have a good night. I'll see all of you on the next edition of Nate at 8.